Welcome back, everyone. Wow, here we are. Last but not least, fifth presenter of our 2 days. It's my pleasure to introduce to you a good friend of 22 years and colleague and co-worker, Ken Tourand. Ken Tourand is the president of NVIT, the Nicola Valley Institute of Technology, and is an Aboriginal person of Cree Métis ancestry. Ken started in NVIT in 1995, 22 years ago, as a faculty member, and after holding a number of administrative positions, became president and CEO of NVIT in 2010. Ken holds a Bachelor of Business Administration degree and a Master of Arts degree in Leadership and Training. Ken is passionate, it's not just on here, I know that it's a fact, about Aboriginal education and has served on many boards. Ken has presented at many conferences, many of which I've been at as well, good for me, and roundtables regarding Aboriginal education and the unique role, the extremely important role that NVIT plays in meeting the needs of Aboriginal students and Aboriginal communities, not just in British Columbia, but across Canada and internationally. Ken is married to Darlene and has 2 wonderful children, all 3 of whom I know as well, very well, Jacob and Stephanie. I have the pleasure of working with Ken the past 22 years, as I said, almost since 1995. We've traveled and presented and worked together, and we speak to each other quite often in terms of, we consult with each other about the challenges we face, the rewarding opportunities that we see for the future, and the possible relationships and partnerships like this that we can foster and that we can promote and support and push forward. And so I enjoy our talks. I enjoy having worked with Ken and being Ken's friend. And so with that, I will turn it over to Ken Tourand. Please help me.
Good afternoon. Just want to do a sound check. You guys okay there? I'm usually fairly loud. Want to recognize the traditional territory, the Cowichan and Coast Salish people. Recognize our elders. My goodness, they've been with us here for the full 2 days. Thank you very much. Appreciate you sitting in our group and appreciate our talk we had yesterday. It's been fantastic. Shout out to the organizers, University of Waterloo, University of Windsor, and VIU. Fantastic conference. You know, there's something to be said about a nice, quaint conference, because the connections you can make within that is much better than a conference. And last week I was at a conference with over 800 people, and you don't get to know hardly anybody. So, fantastic job to all of you, and I'm looking forward to next year's.
Yes.
Warren mentioned this is a conference of his friends, and we started with Doug, and moved to Wanda, then went to Kelly, then went to John, and they have one more space. So I'm not exactly sure how I'm last. Keith told me it was age, and I'm okay. Well, yeah, we'll go with the age thing. That's not a bad way to do it. So, Warren mentioned it a little bit. Let me talk a little bit about me. Wife Darlene, married in 1994, Kamloops girl. Actually knows Shane. Many of you have met Shane. They actually grew up together, so Shane knew her before I did. I have 2 wonderful kids, Stephanie and Jacob. Stephanie is 19, about to turn 20. Fantastic girl, straight A student all the way through. Went to Belgium on a Rotary exchange, and now has come back. She could go anywhere. She could get into UBC like that. She's going to NVIT. Got a boy, son Jake. It's almost as he might be bigger than me. Not big this way, big this way. Big kid, big beard. You know, 18 years old, he can grow a beard, so he needs to grow a beard that kind of looks like the hockey players. Another great kid. He in grade 12, he took a plumbing piping as a dual credit program with the school district, and came out of that, decided he didn't want to be a plumber or pipe fitter, and is now taking a business program at NVIT without dad's maybe a little bit influence. Both of them will be with me for 1 more year, and then they'll be off at into universities and doing great things. I am a member of the Métis Nation in BC, proud member of the Métis Nation in BC. Had the opportunity in 1995, before I went to work for NVIT, I worked for the Métis Association for 8 months. Realized I didn't want to be a politician. If you know anything about Indian politics and Métis politics, just nasty. But a great grounding and a great foundation for my introduction and welcome into the Aboriginal world. Tell you a little bit of story. Hired as an NVIT faculty member in 1995. When I got hired, I was going through some challenges with the Métis Association. Newspaper ad. Back then, they didn't even have cell phones, right? So, a newspaper ad comes out looking for an administrative coordinator, CED. Anybody know what CED stands for? That's exactly what I did. I had no idea. But required a business degree. My wife sees the ad and says, "Oh, Ken's got a business degree." Prints off my resume, does a cover letter, fires it off. I had no idea. So, get a call back. "Yeah, this is Robin from the Nicola Valley Institute of Technology calling. We'd like you to come for an interview tomorrow." I said, "Can you make it Wednesday?" I think it was a Monday. I said, "Can you make it Wednesday instead?" "Yeah, no problem. That's great. Come in on Wednesday." Perfect. Tuesday morning. Holy cow. First of all, I better figure out what CED is going into the interview, right? I have no idea. I kind of knew where Merritt was because it's on just by that time Coquihalla, so I kind of knew where I was going. It's okay. Tuesday, I head to NVIT. Knew a buddy of mine in Merritt. Found it. I said, "Where is this NVIT place?" Nicola Valley Institute. "Oh yeah. So he told me where it is. So I walked in. I said, "Okay, now what am I going to do?" Just like a student kind of walking in. So I went to the bookstore. And I found a lady that worked at the bookstore. I said, "Hi, how you doing?" Her name was Marlene. And I said, "I got an interview tomorrow." And I said, "What can you tell me about NVIT? What can you tell me about ACD?" CED is Community Economic Development. And they were looking for a coordinator to run their Community Economic Development program that we ran in communities across the country. She spent an hour and a half with me and told me everything there was about NVIT, everything there was about ACD, where we had gone before, what the success rate was, what the challenges were. I walked into the interview with a piece of cake, but I knew everything, probably more than some of the people on the interview panel, because the lady at the bookstore had that knowledge. Right? So there's lesson number one. You never know within the organization who you're going to find that knows that. 1995 got hired as that. I did that for a couple years. 1997, manager of human resources, went on maternity leave. They seconded me into that position. My background is in human resources and labor relations. Got into manager of HR and never really looked back. From there, I took over facilities, took over finance. Once you got hold of the money, you're good to go. Worked my way up to a vice president, was vice president for about a decade with my predecessor, who was the non-Aboriginal president, named Casey, good guy. 2010, he left. I moved up within the organization, became president in 2010. Bachelor's degree from SFU, master's degree from Royal Roads. Chaired the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee on an Indigenous Protocol. Anybody heard of that? What that is a protocol that post-secondary institutions can sign that commit to Indigenous education. And right now there is about a third of the post-secondary institutions across Canada that have signed on to that. Not universities, so it doesn't surprise me that you guys haven't signed on to it. It's really for colleges and institutes. And during that, so I got asked to chair that, and it's in partnership with the AFN. I had a national committee of folks all across the province, or all across the country. And we came up with 7 principles. And the one that caused the most challenging was the one that said, accountable to the community. Be accountable to the community. And I had non-Aboriginal presidents, of which there's 90 9% of them across the country. I had this one fellow from an institution in Alberta, which will remain unnamed, said, what does that mean? I'm not accountable to the communities. And I explained to him, I said, really what we're looking for is how can you meet the needs of your local communities if you haven't reached out and asked them what those needs are? Talk to your chiefs. Talk to the elders. Talk to your Aboriginal students. Oh, no, I don't think I can do that. I don't think they've signed. And so he was trying to get us to change the protocol. I took that back to my committee. And I said, I don't want to sign it. I don't want to change it. And they agreed. It's not for everyone. And it stayed the way it is. Avid hockey player. We have MVIT old timers, MVIT Eagles. That's what they're called. A bunch of old guys who think they can still play, but a lot of fun. And I'm an avid golfer. I golf 120 times a year, and I tee off at 6 a.m. before work every time I'm at home, as long as it's not frosty in the course. So when we talk about work-life balance, that's my work-life balance. And having said that, I play 120 times, and I'm not very good. But you know what? It's really not about that. Mr. Chenoweth comes out about half the time. John does. He plays about 50 rounds with me and my cousin, and he beats me every time. But that's okay. Let me talk a little bit about MVIT, and I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time. We were founded by the 5 First Nations bands in the Nicola Valley near Merritt. 2 nations, the Inuktitut and the Syilx Nation. John's from the Okanagan Nation. Shane, who many of you met, is from Lower Nicola Indian Band, which is the Inuktitut Nation. We have an Aboriginal mandate. We were founded by those bands. It was the vision of the chiefs at that time, and under the leadership of Grand Chief Gordon Antoine and Robert Sterling. Those 2 individuals were the ones that said, we need an institution that meets the needs of Aboriginal students, that they can come. Because our Aboriginal students are going to the mainstream post-secondary institution, and they're not succeeding. And that's why they created MVIT. Between 83 and 95, we were a private post-secondary, which means we couldn't issue our own certificates and diplomas. We worked in partnership with others. 1995, we became a public post-secondary institution. Now, I got hired in May 1995. That decision happened in September 1995. Between May and September, my goodness, there was a whole group of individuals within that workplace that thought we were selling out. We are selling out to the white man, was the term they used. We're going to lose our Indigenous mandate. We're going to just become just like Caribou College at the time. And our board, Grand Chief Gordon Antoine, who's the board chair, said, if we don't do it, we will never succeed. We have to become public. And his vision is what we're still trying to aspire to today. He knew that if we didn't do that, we would fail. 2007, we expanded into Vancouver, took over the Institute of Indigenous Government, which was another Aboriginal institution that was in trouble. Ministry came to us, so now we have 2 campuses. Our main one is in Merritt, second one is in Vancouver. We go into the Aboriginal communities and teach about 30 to 35 Aboriginal communities a year. John's responsible for that. We actually go right into the community, teach the courses. And we can pretty much teach almost everything. We run healthcare assistant, we can run community economic development, we can run Aboriginal tourism, we can do anything in there except practical nursing, which is a little tough. We have a First Nations Board of Governors, 100% First Nations Board. Shane, as I mentioned, and many of you met, and I want to recognize him. He's my vice chair. He's been on the board for about 7 years now. You're only supposed to have 6, but we like him, so we'll keep him around for another year or 2. And he's a member of our founding bands. I also want to recognize Faye. Faye is our faculty rep on our board as well, and as a faculty member with MVIT, so appreciate both you guys being here. And for MVIT, it's about true partnership. We're going to talk about that in a second, but institutions have a tendency to say, yeah, we're in partnership. We're in partnership with this First Nation, we're in that partnership. And then they get into an agreement with them, and they charge them 30% overhead. That's not true partnership. John mentioned it before. This community doesn't have any money. What can we do? Okay, let's try to figure out where we can find the money. It's not about making a profit. Education's not about making a profit. My colleagues, my president colleagues can't figure that out. It's about educating students, it's not about making a profit. They're not there yet. That is my Merritt campus. As Warren mentioned, it's very much like this. It is the most beautiful place to work. We have about 550 to 600 students there. 70% come from outside of the valley, 70%, 75% are Aboriginal. We have on-campus housing, daycare, lots of different programs. And again, recognize our 5 founding bands. Our Burnaby campus, that's it. Very small, 170 students. BCIT owns that building, so we're attendant to BCITs. And it goes Salish territory, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh. And Squamish. Our demographics very quickly. Head count, we're very small, about 1,400 students. I think this year we're at 1,440, which is a pretty good year for us. We ran about 80% Aboriginal, significantly female, 70% female. John runs around and tells all the guys, hey, we're 70% female. Come on over. And then within BC, and this is the start line. There's 200, 203, 198, 205, depends who we talk to in terms of the number of BC bands, BC First Nations. We have somewhere between 55 and 60% of those bands represented in our student body. Nobody else is even close. So when we say we're BC's Aboriginal post-secondary institution, that's the fact. That's what we rely on. I started my strategy with a quote from a 95-year-old white guy, which is kind of an interesting thing. He says this is an Aboriginal culture. This is the workplace culture. I've never done this presentation before, so I'm going to be interested in the feedback. This came from a conversation that Warren said, and he told me about the conference. We're going to have this conference, and we want you to come and speak. He didn't tell me it was going to be last. He said, we want you to come and speak. I said, okay. So we're sitting March, so it was about a while, but in March, I'm saying, well, what do you want me to talk about? I said, I can talk about NDIC, but that's the normal one. I said, I can do strategic planning, but that's not really in there. What do you want me to talk about? So he said, well, what have you done? What has made NDIT different? And when we sat there and Warren talked about it, we consult all the time about it. It's about the challenges we have within the workplace. So today I'm going to have, my presentation is going to be on those conversations you normally wouldn't have out in the open. So, how many people here have a boss? And how many people supervise others? All right. So, inevitably, you had some of these conversations with whether it's your spouse or a coworker that's driving you nuts. So, what I'm going to try to do is present some of those things here and dispel some of the myths and share some of the lessons I've learned. The idea is, you guys won't all agree with me. I'm going to say some things where you're going to say, oh, I can't believe you said that. That's completely wrong. And that's the whole purpose. Right? So in your sharing circle that comes out next, I actually want you to say, hey, you know what, I disagree with it. And that's fine, because these are my learnings. This is what I've learned. This is the way I do it. And it's not just me. I've learned. We have an elders council, 19 elders. I sit with them regularly, and I've heard what they've had to say. I have a board of governors, which is the best board of governors we've ever had. They are fantastic. Complete First Nations board, but their wisdom, their guidance, their vision for the institution, and their ability to understand when to push and when not to push and where we want to go makes my job as president so much easier. Let me tell you about my introduction to the cross-cultural workplace. Warren mentioned I was interviewed in March of 1995, and walked in and nailed the interview, and that was all good, got offered the position. And started May 8th, 1995. And before that, the Saturday before that, there was graduation. So I said, well, come down to the graduation. So I did. Met Helen, sat with Helen during the graduation. That was all good. So between May, and you know how it is in post-secondary, June, July, August, there's nobody around. In August, we get there and we have a student, or a faculty, or a staff retreat. Staff retreat at Glimpse Lake. This is going to be fun up in the camping kind of thing. So we go there and everything's all kind of nice. And of course, I only know kind of a little bit of few people. And as a business guy, I've kind of gravitated to the director of finance, who's a non-Aboriginal guy. We get into this circle, and we're talking about the workplace. And one of the Aboriginal faculty members got up, put his finger in the face of the director of finance and said, "You shouldn't be here, you're a white guy." And I went, oh my God. My boss is a white guy. That's the first thing I thought. I thought, what am I going to do, right? Warren was my boss at the time. So I'm like, yeah. And from there, the whole kind of staff retreat kind So I thought, okay. And I'm still a non-teaching faculty member. I'm just new, 26 years old or something. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pass. 1996 comes. By this time I hadn't been seconded yet. I was just about to be. Same place. Same institutes. Doesn't matter. Different people, a few different people. But the racism that happened within that and the attitudes of some of the staff were that as an Aboriginal organization, you should, if you're not Aboriginal, you shouldn't be here. And I thought, holy cow, right? In 1997, I became the manager of HR. We've never been back. We don't have those anymore. We don't go on it. We'll have a welcome back. And I'll tell you about our recent welcome back in a minute. But I don't want that. What a way to start the year. Like in August. Like the students are all coming back, everybody's supposed to be pumped, and we're going, phew. I'm like, oh. Anyway, so I haven't done that. So that was my introduction to the cross-cultural workplace. It was like a big eye-opener. I was like, wow. MBIT, and for me, we really do walk in two worlds. 20 years at MBIT, so my experience in my presentation will be really one organization. So I will, I'm not going to pretend that that's the same everywhere else, but I will let you know. And a lot of the stuff that I present, you're going to know. Intuitively, you're going to know that. So a lot of it's not going to be rocket science, especially the HR people. They're going to say, well, yeah. But it's an opportunity. If I can bring a few things out that you haven't thought about, that would be great. We are a unionized environment. Inherently, there's some conflict between management and union members. That's okay. Post-secondary environment, so we're dealing with strong academic folks, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. And again, hope is to stimulate discussion. Lesson number one. Hire the right people. If you don't hire the right people, you will forever fail. Of course, it's easier said than done. Our collective agreement and our philosophy at MBIT is we have a preference for hiring qualified Aboriginal people. We want as many Aboriginal people as we can get. Having said that, if you're a non-Aboriginal person and you're welcome into our family, and we call MBIT a family, you are invited to stay until you retire. That's my philosophy as president, and I tell everybody within the organization as many times as I can. My non-Aboriginal, MBIT would not succeed without the help of our non-Aboriginal employees. You need to hire. So all things being equal, hire the Aboriginal person. External perception may not be the internal reality. What I mean by that is, when you're outside looking in, you see a posting, that's going to go to so-and-so. That's going to go to Joe over there because he's a lock. You know what? I've been around way too long to know. You may think that that person is seen in a good light by management or whoever's on the hiring council. That may not be. Don't ever not apply for something that you want because you think somebody else has got a lock on it. You have the opportunity to get in there and change the people's minds. Apply for everything. We also don't settle. So having said that, we have a very strong business instructor. He's an MBA. His name's Matt Pascal, a member of one of the local communities near Bonaparte, Whiskey Jack. And I posted for a Aboriginal business person for 3 years before he finally agreed. And I actively recruited him and said, you need to come work for us. You need to come work for us. It took me 3 years to recruit him. But we just kept on reposting. And sometimes you do that. Other times, you look at it and say, you know what? We're in Little Merritt. We're not going to be able to hire a Aboriginal accountant who can go work anywhere to come to Little Merritt. It's not going to happen. And so at that time, you try to get the best person you can. John has heard this 1,000 times. Every time you hire somebody, it's $1 million decision. You have to assume that that person's going to stay with you for 25 years. $1 million decision. Don't take it lightly. Look for potential. Don't be afraid to hire and promote underqualified with potential, which is kind of an odd first thing. There is a significantly larger number of Aboriginal graduates graduating every year. And you can mentor, you can train those folks, and look for those who you can trust. It's the attitude. If you can teach the skills, but you can't always teach the attitude. I'm going to give you 2 examples. One is we hired a lady as an assistant to the dean. And she had she was like a legal assistant. She had a certificate or a diploma in legal. And within about the first year, I thought, she's kind of a shining star, right? She was kind of buried in the organization. She's now my director of students and on my leadership team. Took her about 15 years to get there. But she kept looking, and through my encouragement, kept looking for the opportunities, move through the organization, keep performing. And now she's a member of my senior management team. Now she's got a master's degree and everything else. But amazing. I have another example where I had an assistant who was my assistant, and when I became president, I moved her into my manager of HR position. No HR experience except what she had when she was working with me. I also will tell a story about hiring a dean who presented to you this morning. My dean was a K-12 guy. He had no experience in post-secondary besides being the board chair of MBIT at one point. And so when he applied, community member from one of the local communities, educated, qualified, no post-secondary experience. Well, that's okay. We can teach the post-secondary experience. And now he's fantastic. That's my succession plan right there. Except he's older than me. Never underestimate the importance of a good team. Team has to not only share your vision, but they have to have your back. They need to share your passion. And when you get your team operating and everybody's going in the same direction, it's so rewarding. So be aware of that. The last one, which I added just recently, last night, came out of one of our conversations. And as a non-Aboriginal organization, you got to be really careful of tokenism. And you know what? Our government does it all the time. Oh, we'll just put one Aboriginal person on that board. Check. That person. Right? And then there's a question that comes up, and they all look to the Aboriginal person and say, well, you're the expert. What? No, I'm just a board member, right? So be really, really careful. It's not fair to the individual to do that. Agree to disagree, respectfully. The post-secondary system breeds conflict, and you can't be afraid of that. There is an inevitable clash between the academics and the students and the finance. At the end of the day, everybody's still working for the student. Don't fear. Conflict is the opportunity to have the conversations. I spent a lot of time, and just recently, I'm getting wiser as I get older. I spent about 2 years trying to get my team to actually like each other. Right? Be friends, right? Like each other. Fighting, going back and forth. Then they're coming to me venting about that person, and that person's coming to me venting about that person. And I'm taking them on retreats and trying to do team building exercises. I'm going to my board and I'm saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with these 4. They can't seem to get it through their mind. All of a sudden I had a conversation with one of my elders. How's the organization run? I said, it's fine, it's fantastic. Then they're doing their job. Oh yeah, no bother. What are you worried about? So I met my team and I said, okay, you know what? If you have a problem, you talk to that person. I'm not paying you $100,000 a year to come to vent me. If you have a problem with that person, you talk to that person, and that person talk to you. I don't want to hear about it anymore. So I don't know whether I'm just living in La La Land, because they're not coming to me, which is a possibility. But since doing that, it's actually achieved the goal. Because I'm not worried about it anymore. Do your job. And if you're going to disagree respectfully and come to a solution. No surprises. Key. And that goes throughout the organization. I have a commitment to my board, no surprises. My board chair, my vice chair to an extent, knows everything. They know every work that's going on. I got student complaints going on. I got harassment complaints going on. You know everything. And as a good chair, good vice chair, don't overreact. I'm looking after it. I tell my team the same thing. No surprises. If we screw up, tell me. 99% of the screw-ups I can fix. Just don't talk to government. Don't talk to Revenue Canada. Those are pretty much the two. Between that, we're good. My assistant didn't get that, and actually, very quick tangent. Revenue Canada came and she responded and didn't tell me, and pretty soon we're getting audited, and we had to get legal counsel and fight and got it all overturned. I was like, that's a good lesson. Don't talk to Revenue Canada. The grass isn't always greener. Somebody here, and I forget who it said, and one in our group, and it was you right there, said that if individuals want to leave, support them. Because you don't want them with you anyway. If they're not happy, then off they go. And sometimes it's not that they're not happy. Sometimes there's circumstances that say they have to leave. I like to pretend. So when Warren, I'll tell you a quick story about Warren. So Warren hired me in 1995, and he was my boss. And eventually I hired him back, and there's going to be a slide on that. But when he wanted to leave and come to VIU, and the opportunity was to VIU, you're leaving me. How can you leave me? Well, he's got a grandchild that's 20 minutes down the road. That's good enough excuse for me, man. Go be with your family. Nothing's more important than the family, right? So, 100%. And in some ways, the relationship's actually better. Because I don't really care what he does during the workday. Now it's just a friend, so it's all good. But I've had a number of examples where I had a director of finance who left because she got offered a job. More money, less responsibility. Who wouldn't take that job? Took the job. Less than 18 months later, she's no longer there. Things have worked out for her, and she's moved to another institution. It's all good. But for a time, you're like, and you get the phone call, why did I leave? Can I come back? Well, no, because I already filled your position, but thanks, right? So be really, really careful. If you're thinking you don't, make sure you take a good long look at where you're working and how good you have it. And at MVIT, we have very little turnover. We create an environment where Aboriginal people, and non-Aboriginal people for that matter, want to work for us. And I shared in my group, we have culture, we have special leave, we have cultural leave. You're actually allowed to miss work to attend Sundances and powwows and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. There is a recognition of that within our institution. And we want that. We want to create that environment. But everybody can be replaced. Talk to bottom. I tell everybody and I tell my team, we're day to day. I'm day to day. I can get a call right now that my board chair says, thanks, but you're out. I said, okay, fine. Cut the check. But no problem. Because I don't want to be, and I've told my board right from the beginning when I got hired as president, if I'm not the right person to lead the organization, just come and tell me. Because I don't want to be there. I don't want the little conversation from the board to go around, I'm going to get rid of the president. No. Have the conversation with me. If I'm not the right guy, no problem. There's all kinds of people that can come and do that. Right? I'm not worried about that. really about the students, it's about the organization, it's about where we want to go. And if I'm not the right one, and I tell my team, jokingly, I tell my team, hey, if I'm day to day, you're day to day too. Right? What have you done for me lately? One story. Don't cave into the threats of departure. My predecessor, great guy, my director of finance says, no, I'm leaving. My predecessor said, no, don't go. We'll give you $5,000 more. She says, yeah, okay. I'm like, why would you do that? I am still living, and I don't know how many years, almost a decade. I'm still dealing with the fallout of that decision, and she's no longer even there. Because the inequity, I've got a slide come up, the inequity that created within the workplace is unbelievable. How come she gets 5,000? How come I don't get 5,000? You want to leave? Let me write you a letter of reference. Be nice to your employees. Your employees are your most important asset. NVIT is the best place to work. I could go work almost anywhere. I've chosen to spend my career, and if I'm lucky, I will retire there from day to day. So you never know. But I want to spend the rest of my career there because it's fantastic. Best place to work. Treat your employees as you would like to be treated. One day your employee will become your boss. So Mr. Weir hired me in 1995, and in 2010. 2010, I hired him back as my dean. Now I'm his boss. So that's a really good. See that come around like that?
So the moral of the story is be careful how you treat your.
Be careful how you treat your employees, because they may one day become your boss.
Yep.
This is a question that I don't know. I would like you to think about it, and I'd love the feedback on this. One question for the sharing circle, and that is. At MBIT, we're trying to create a family, and we talk about the family. We talk about the non-Aboriginal people are welcome to stay there till we retire. Once they retire, we'll do our best to fill with an Aboriginal person. So that's out of one side, and we tell everybody that's what we want. On the other hand, we're producing reports that say we have 65% Aboriginal employees. And I had a question from one of my staff saying, well, on one hand, you want us to be a family, and on the other hand, you're saying, these guys are my favorite kids, and you guys aren't. It's a good question. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that yet. That's one of the ones that are sitting there, because on one hand, the board likes to know that stuff, how many Aboriginal employees we are, for their information. And that percentage doesn't change because nobody leaves. I've been sitting at 60% Aboriginal employees since 1995. Because you lose 3, and you hire 3, and out of those 3 you hire, about 2 out of the 3 are Aboriginal, and away you go. Then the percentage never changes. But do I stop producing that report that segregates those employees out? Don't know. Talked a little bit about internal equity. Guard against the favoritism. Treat your employees the same. Be careful. Yeah, we solved the one issue by offering the $5,000 and she stayed. But all we did was create the larger issue. Right? Salaries, titles, everything matters. Be very, very careful about that. Got to keep that pulse in the organization. Right? We're underpaid. I have no problem saying post-secondary system's underpaid. MBIT is even lower than that. We are underpaid, but we're all underpaid. So it's not an inequity with internally, right? So you're kind of mad at somebody else. But if we come and said, if I were paying my deans properly, but the rest weren't, that creates the internal equity. That'll sink you. Tough slide. Originally I called "You're fired," and then I thought, reference to Trump, and I thought maybe I shouldn't do that. So I thought, you know what? You know when it's working. Probationary periods, and this is kind of the negative stuff, but you know what? As managers and within your organization, employees have probationary periods for a reason. If it's not working, say it's not working. If the fit's not there, make the decision. Right? And for a long time I didn't. We're going to extend your probation. Try to make it work. Right? And at the end of the day, all it does is cost you more. And your organization just can't go anywhere because you're stuck. So the longer you wait, the more difficult it is. for us, as an Aboriginal organization, we love, we want our Aboriginal, we want everybody to succeed, but we don't want to lose a good Aboriginal person. And we want all of our Aboriginal people to succeed. And I would say in our last 5 years maybe, I probably had to let go, 4 or 5. Right? Fit wasn't there. Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal, the fit's not there. The fit's not there, the fit's not there. Right? Call a spade a spade. If you don't, and I knew, and one of them was a senior individual within my organization, dean or associate dean level. And nice guy, great guy. Actually, he'd be great for VIU. But he was at a level, he was at an academic level where he wanted to do research. And he wanted to spend his time more on that and less around students. And at MVIT, we're about students. We don't have the capacity to get into that research side. And I couldn't get him down into the weeds where we need to be, where we're making sure our students succeed. And in the end, called it. Come on, cousin. Can't you give me the job? I had all kinds of phone calls. Hey, a phone call the other. Hey, this is your auntie. Hi, auntie. How are you? Well, yeah, this lady I'm working for, and she has a niece, and she's got a master's degree, and I wonder if you can get her. No. I can't believe you're asking me, but I don't even sit on the hiring committees anyway, so no. In the Aboriginal community, everybody's family. Everybody's family. On the island, everybody's family. And Doug talked about it. Where we are in the interior, it's the same thing. Everybody's family. And so you have to guard against the nepotism versus the community. We want the community members. We're asking our staff, declare the conflict, don't sit on it. Avoid any perception of that. We hired somebody who's no longer with us. We hired a daughter of a cousin of mine, who happened to have the same last name. I hate that. I don't want the person with the same last name. But I stayed right out of it. That recommendation actually went to the board chair. You need to avoid the conflict of interest. Sitting on hiring committees. We've got family on staff. We have a mother and 2 kids who work with us. We've got a couple siblings that work with us. We've got that, and that's fine. As long as they weren't involved in the hiring of it, that's fine. Quick story on relationship. When I was the manager of HR, I got an email, an anonymous email, coming through some Hotmail account. And all it said was, one of your students is pregnant with a faculty member's baby. So after I picked myself up off the floor, I went, what am I going to do now? I had no idea what to do, right? So, pulled the team together, right? And I told the president, no surprise, I told the president, hey, got this email, right? Sure enough, we had a student who was pregnant with a faculty member, and it was in his class, and he hadn't declared it. So he's still teaching the mother of his baby. I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to get into the whole 2 consenting adults. Whatever you do, I don't care, but you can't teach the person. We got another instructor, and it's all fine. But you need to be aware of that and beyond that. Hope that you don't ever get those emails. Beware your existing employees, which sounds kind of bad, but within every organization you have, I got 80% of my problems coming from 20% of my employees. Now you've got the ones, the Debbie Downer who's down here, and it just doesn't matter what you do, it's wrong. Right? And you hire a new employee, and get another advocate down there. So we guard against that. We know that. We keep our new employees pretty close to our deans and associate deans, and we bring them under. Make sure we tell them hey, everything you hear is not necessarily true. This is what we're doing. This is where we're trying to go. Right? Be very aware of the negativity and bias. We're in a unionized position. They're doing their job. I have no ability to get rid of those folks. Right? And you know what? My philosophy on this, I don't worry about it. I focus on the good stuff we're doing. I have to deal with that stuff. I deal with it. But act quickly. Make sure you're new employees. But no one went to hold them. No one went to hold Kid Rogers. Music theme. Fighting on principle is extremely expensive. And sometimes you have to pay. And if you know me, I've got a business background. I hate paying. But you know what? Sometimes it's cheaper and better for relationships. So sometimes, in a number of times, we solve those grievances by cutting a check. We want somebody to leave, and I thought, okay, you know, I could let that person go for costs, and that person will then come back and sue me for wrongful dismissal, and I'll have to hire my lawyer, and we'll engage, and then myself and the dean and probably another faculty member will all go down, and we'll be in Vancouver for a couple of days in an arbitration, and at the end of the day, it's about an $80,000 bill. Or I can go to the employee and say, look, I don't think you're making it. I think I got support to let you go for costs. But you know what? Here's a check for 50 grand. Sign this piece of paper that says you're not going to sue me. And off they go. I don't like to do that. Sometimes that's what you need to do. Do your research and be prepared. This is one of my favorite stories. My union president comes back, files a grievance. It's a grievance book. You didn't post that position. Collective agreement says you need to post it. Okay. When do you want to meet? Yeah, okay. So she comes in, she's fired up, right? Want to sit and talk to that? Pull a piece of paper and say, here's the posting. She didn't do her research. It was on the web. And it's always been there. Make sure you know what you're doing. She doesn't do that anymore. Procrastination isn't always a bad thing, especially in management. Employ a 24-hour rule. Don't respond in haste. Be careful on your emails. Be careful on your communications. Don't tweet when you're drinking. Some really good ones. But for me, and I tell my managers this, you know, if your employees can get you running around solving all their problems, they'll do that. If you just don't respond, pretty soon the next day you come back to them and say, hey, I saw that email yesterday. You didn't do anything? Oh, what did you notice that? Oh, yeah, no, that's not a problem. And they just solve it. Right? So, hire the right people. And I'm a big proponent of this. Hire the right people. Let them do their job. I don't want to get into John's. John, you look after it. If you got a problem, let me know. If I can help, let me know. I don't want to get in this business. I don't want to. Otherwise, I might as well do it. I don't need it. We had an incident at graduation. Tell them all the warts of MVIT. It's very, very good. But we had an incident at a graduation. The rain was coming. We didn't know we were going to have our picture of our graduates. And my director of students would run around and say, no, we're going to have it here. One of our staff members say, no, we're having it at the park. We got half the students in the park. We got half the students still sitting there. Our elders are half on the bus and half not. I'm like, where are you going? Finally, the elders go down. My director of finance runs over to me and says, you got to solve this. I'm like, you know what? Actually, I don't. My director of students knows that things falling apart. The last thing she needs is the president come in and take over. It's fine. Right? We started graduation 10 minutes late. It was fine. So I don't need to get in there. Right? Hire the right people, let them do their job. You don't know anything about me. Beware the assumptions about non-Aboriginal individuals who often have significant knowledge and experience. There's some non-Aboriginal scholars, one of them sitting right here, who knows more about Aboriginal education in Indigenous communities than the majority of the Aboriginal people I know. And yet in many places, because they're non-Aboriginal, they're dismissed. Completely false. It's a terrible assumption to make. And on the other side, just because the person's Aboriginal doesn't mean they know the history in the past. Right? I can go to my board chair and say, did you know all that stuff that Doug White was talking about? He's amazing, by the way. Amazing, the knowledge you have. Right? He's fantastic, but I'd say 99.9% of the Aboriginal people can't even come close to the knowledge that he has. Right? Be very, very careful of those assumptions. Let me give you an employee example. We have a non-Aboriginal associate registrar. He's got a master's degree. Great. One of our Aboriginal faculty, one of our partnerships this year is we're running a Masters of Indigenous Education through UBC, delivered at MVIT. It's a real big deal for MBIT that we're running a UBC master's degree at our campus in Tourand. It's huge. So when one of our Aboriginal faculty members walked into this lady's office and said, "You need to take that program." The lady looked at her and said, "I have a master's degree." "Yeah, but you're a non-Aboriginal person. You need to take that program." That lady is married to a status Indian from one of the local bands. She's got 4 kids, all band members. She's welcomed as part of that community and probably knows more about that culture than the Aboriginal person who was talking. But because that person was Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal, you need to take that program. What a terrible assumption to make. Right? And we had to go with it. Just let it go. Right? She was visible. She pissed her off. How could she say that to me? Right? I'm not even going to make any excuses for that. Part 2. Everyone has issues. Everyone has struggles. One of my individuals in one of my groups. Family, addictions, financial, sick kids, looking after grandchildren. My assistant looks after a special needs grandchild. And now most employees don't know because she's been there for 20-some years. But you wouldn't know it from when you're working with her. But she doesn't travel very much because she needs to be with her special needs grandchild. And she's got lots of flexibility. You need to go, you go. If I'm not there, you don't need to ask, you go. Right? Most employers, you're on a need-to-know basis. And most times you don't need to know. Right? You want to support your employees. You don't want the abuse, but there's a difference between abusing the time and abusing the leave, and we talked about it again in one of our groups. You know, our cultural leave. Oh, how can you do that? Isn't it kid abuse? You know what? Actually, by offering that, and we offer it under a special leave, and it's not endless. Right? You get 10 days a year or something like that. But by doing that, half the people don't even take it. And those that do, they know it's there. So there is no abuse. They don't need to do that. And you create an environment that you want to come to work. You don't have to work. See the front page. Accountability. 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 You need to be accountable. And I stress this to my team so much. Everybody needs to be held to an equal standard. Everybody's the same, Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal. There is no difference between my status Indian dean, my non-status director of students, my non-Aboriginal director of finance. They're all held to the same standard because I don't care. They're all a member of MBIT's management team. It's the same standard. Right? Credit cards, travel claims, expense claims, receipts, all of it. Same standards. Give you 2 examples. One is around presentations. There's a story about budget officers. The non-Aboriginal budget officers. In a non-Aboriginal organization, non-Aboriginal budget officers going in there. Get 20 minutes to present your budget. Boom, in, 20 minutes out. Boom, in, 20 minutes out. Aboriginal guy walks in. Took an hour and a half. Nobody said anything. Don't want to say anything. My organization, 20 minutes. Why would I treat him any different? He's just looking after one of my important things, and it's all about students. Why would I give that individual more? And actually, in my opinion, you actually do a disservice by giving that person more time because it creates resentment from all your other managers. Why would you do that? Don't understand that. Red River College. Anybody know where Red River College is?
Yeah.
Manitoba?
Yeah.
Anybody know my friend Stephanie?
Yeah.
Stephanie Forsyth. I'm going to use her by name because you guys can Google her later and read the horror stories. She was a president of Northwest Community College up in Terrace. And she went through, and she kind of, in my opinion, didn't run that organization very well and created a lot of turmoil within the Aboriginal communities that surround Terrace. They've never recovered. She went to Red River College. In no time, Stephanie was submitting receipts and purchasing. So she purchased a pair of $200 gold shoes on the college budget. She bought snow tires on the college budget. She bought party rentals for her daughter's wedding on the college budget. And she just happened to end up with a brand new marble granite countertop in her kitchen because there was surplus. I wanted She was no longer employed by Red River College, as you'd expect. But to imagine somebody, and I talked to their chair of the board the other day, he said, she broke every rule of a public sector employee. How can you do that? How do you justify that? Right? Well, I bought the golf shoes because the only golf tournaments I go in is, and she was making like $300,000 a year. Buy your own golf shoes. Are you kidding? It's unbelievable. Like it's you know what you do. Google Stephanie Forsyth. It's amazing. Oh yeah, let's get into some controversial stuff. Don't believe the hype. Indian time. In the workplace, no such thing as Indian time. Indian time is just an excuse to be late. Heard that from my elders. My board starts on time. Clarence Louis starts on time. You want to start talking about cultural events? I got no problem. Right? The elders say the cultural event starts when the cultural event starts. You know, when the people start when the people start. I got no problem with that. That's fine. I went to a wedding one time. It was like 3 hours late. Whatever. Comes to the workplace. I don't believe it. My meetings start on time. My meetings end on time. Right? And my expectation is people are there. Cross-cultural work, this doesn't matter. Right? My time's valuable. Right? If I'm not meeting with you guys, I should be doing something that's benefiting students. And so I'm not going to be sitting in my room waiting, in a meeting room waiting for 20 minutes or a half an hour for you to roll in when I could be doing something else that would benefit students. This is the best. I hear this in an Aboriginal organization, probably not so much in a non-Aboriginal. That is a white decision. What? What is a white decision? That's simply a decision you don't like, right? And they say, and we've heard it. Don't tell me it's a white decision. Right? I'm paid to make those tough decisions. Just because you don't like it is really not my problem. I'll make the decisions we need to make for the benefit of the organization and to continue to fulfill our mission and vision. People. Our circles talked about respect. RESPCT, again. Respectful working environment and dealing with the internal racism. And as an Aboriginal organization, we have internal racism. Interesting enough, it's against the Aboriginal versus the non-Aboriginals. And we had one, I don't mind sharing it. We had a staff meeting. We have a prominent Aboriginal faculty member who's been there a long, long time. And she was talking about, interesting enough, which I completely disagree with her, the issue of time. And she shows up late for a class, which we're trying to address respectfully. But she said, time is a non-Aboriginal or a white person's way of doing it. And she said, a white person, and then she actually singled out one of my non-Aboriginal employees. There you are. And of course, I've heard her speak 1,000 times. I'm not paying attention, I'm on my phone. Right? We break for lunch. All of a sudden, I got my VP. Why didn't you say anything? What talking about? I said, we got people crying, everybody's upset. Oh my God. And I'm going, you know what? I went right back to 95. Oh my God, we're back into Clinch Lake, right? And this is in August of, last year or 2 years ago or something. So I thought, I went back and I addressed it. And that's where I've started, and now we're probably 1.5 to 2 years into my campaign, I guess. As non-Aboriginal people, you are welcome to stay at NVIT until you retire. And as long as I'm president, that's my focus. Right? And you know what? I would say 90% of my Aboriginal people agree with that. And I said it again. I had a staff meeting just earlier in March. I had the staff meeting. Everybody walked in except my 4 or 5 people that are in my 20% cosmopolitan. Small meeting. Are you Indian enough? Now I've got this coming. Now I've got they're coming against my leadership team and my management team saying, well, Tourand. We just hired a new team. Name's Dead Canada, strong 18 women. And one of our faculty members talking, Tourand. Is that Métis? It's been there for 20-some years and you're asking. Of course it's Métis. Look in your history book, right? But, then they go, well, John, I didn't really live on reserve. Is he Indian enough? You live between the tracks, for heaven's sakes, right? But I'm like, well, are we going to go back into blood quantum? And you know what? Give me a break. I got no time for that. You know, rather than just worrying about that, let's look about what we're doing. Let's look at our graduation. Let's look at our student graduation rates. Let's look about students, and John talked about the underbelly. Those students who are coming in, who dropped out in grade 9, and they're coming to MVIT at they're 25 years old, and they start with us and they're at about an 04 level. And in 6 or 7 years, they're graduating with a Bachelor of Social Work. And at graduation, it's like losing one of the family members because they've been with MVIT for so long, they're almost on the payroll. And now they're crossing that stage. Right? And they cross that stage and everybody's happy and they get to the elder, and then the student starts crying because they're leaving their family. It's an amazing institution. We all have a responsibility to call it. And I'm telling my management team and I'm telling everybody, if you see it, you call it. And don't let it happen. And I don't care whether it's Aboriginal versus non-Aboriginal, male versus female, whatever. It doesn't belong at MVIT. And eventually, I'll get it out. Are we Indian enough? Question. I had a faculty member walk in. Is this an Indian school or what? No good can come out of my response on that. I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, okay, have a seat. What's the problem? Wow, are we Indian enough? You know, we're an Indian school. I said, okay, hold it. I said, we were founded by the 5 bands. We have an Aboriginal mandate. We're continuing on the same vision, essentially, that was set by Grant Coordinator. What's the problem? And got in. And he's one of those fellas who grew up. I don't even blame him. He grew up in that. His childhood, his family was very much that. And I have to guard him about that because he's one of those ones who's right on the edge and doesn't really have a filter. And I'm like, you know what? And he's not a bad guy. Tourand trying to control him. He says, hey, everybody's welcome here. I have another one, interesting enough. Students who took this guy who was in saying, are we Indian enough? Students in that class, they go to another faculty member, and in one of their conversations said, the white man. This is, again, status Indian, does a lot of work on reserves. He's a corporate guy, though. Do not say that in my class. It's inappropriate. Right? As a faculty member, I got no problem. You manage your classroom however you want. Right? Students were like, I can say that there. I don't care what you say there. You don't say it in my class. You want to talk about the non-Aboriginal or the corporate world, we can talk about that. Aboriginal cultures, different across the country, they're different from band to band. You need to be respectful of that, respect the local traditions, and we do a lot of work on that. We make sure our elders are from our local areas. We had an issue right when I first got hired, comes up about every 2 years, smudging on campus. Right? Oh, I'm allergic to it, I don't like this. It's an Aboriginal institution. And we had a lady who went from one of the local bands, couldn't handle it, and I just said, well, go for a walk, take a break, go to Tim Hortons, leave the building, but we're not stopping. And you need that type of decisive decision making from the top that says it is a celebration of our Aboriginal culture, and anybody within my institution or any student can smudge anytime they want, anywhere in the institution, and they've got my support. We've had some cultural challenges. Totem poles. You walk into our building, we've got 2 totem poles. Yeah, there are 5 bands here. We don't have totem poles in the interior. Oops, how are we going to handle that? The fact is we actually had a program, and we had students build those totem poles. Once we explained it, they said, yeah, no problem, those totem poles can go there. We got to be careful of that. We're building, an elder sweat house. I told John, I said, leave the conversation with the elders and let's talk about what the elder sweat house should look like. Pretty soon it was like a $2 million sweat house. They moved their office, there's electricity. Whoa. We're talking about this little traditional one in the back, right? Be careful what you ask for. Because once you get the elders, right? John had to rein him in. Oh, no, hold it, guys. I'm going to come back. Our students had an opportunity to dissect a cougar for environmental resources. And we brought elders in and did that. And we had an issue where one of our elders said that females who were under time couldn't be near the cougar. The instructor didn't know what to do. Holy cow, right? And actually it was handled by our associate because they consulted with the elders and said, what's a school project we're going to do? And it ended up being fine. But you gotta be careful on that because you would never expect that. This last one happened in May at our graduation. We have a big drum. Drums in the thing, and we have local to our area our hand drummers. And pretty soon there's a conflict going on, and of course I don't know what's going on, right? I have no idea. I'm looking after everybody, but the hand drummers are telling the big drummer to go away. And luckily, one of my staff members, who's one of the hand drummers, said, you know what? This is about students. We've got students on the big drum. We've got students on the hand drum. We're going to do this, and it got solved. But if you're not aware of that stuff, you'll tear the institution apart. Talked a little bit about partnerships, true partnerships. Reach out to the chiefs. I have an excellent relationship with our chiefs. They have my back. At any time I can call them up. I've got them on Twitter. I can call them a direct message. I said, I need you in my office. They're there. We talk to them about the local needs of the communities. Their elders are sitting in our elders council. I have an annual meeting with the chiefs every year with my board. We don't get into their politics. They don't get into ours. But it's about a respect. It's about a true partnership that we want to make sure that even as an organization, and you know, it was a long time ago since they founded us, there are roots. That's where we came from. And you have to respect that. We involve them in our events. We have we rotate, but our chief speaks at our graduation. And wherever we can, we hire from our local bands, of course. Celebrate. That's some of the good stuff. Celebrate. Celebrate the culture. Our graduations are an amazing event. Drummers and singers and dancers. Regalia. Douglas College. Everybody know where Douglas College is in Westminster? A couple years ago, Douglas College was in the news because one of their Aboriginal students wanted to wear the regalia across the stage. And they said, no. That president is no longer with them, which is probably not a bad thing. It's one thing about respecting the economy, but my goodness, respect the culture and respect the traditions, and we love it when our graduates wear the regalia across. It's fantastic. We have an elders council that I mentioned before. Everything we do involves food. You can tell by John. Right? We were just little guys at one time. But we've got food within our organization all the time. We have quarterly elders goodie days is what they call it, where we put lunch on for all of our students and all of our staff. And it's building community within the organization. We're very proud of the culture. Similar to VIU, and VIU's done a very, very good job. But we celebrate it. Right? Whether it's pictures or clocks, language classes, whatever. You need to get that out. And you need to do that. Find your passion. Don't rub your passion. Find your passion. Work hard and play hard. And that's a good motto to live by. I have no problems. You know, you're out on the road, good times and conferences and all the rest of that stuff. You're never late for a session. So, represent your organization 24/7. I was at a meeting with Shane was there, minister, and Shane said, "Minister, I'm going to take off my board chair, put on a different hat. My board hat, put on a different hat." And I said, "Well, can I do that?" They said, "No. You're 24/7 MVIT." I said, "That's okay." And by all means, love what you do. If you don't love what you do, why are you doing it? Going to share a video with you. Interesting enough, everybody saw the video that Kelly showed yesterday. It was kind of interesting because Kelly's video actually stemmed out of the video you're about to see. He was at a national conference when we launched this, and he's quoted in our video. And I'm pretty sure that he ran back and said, "Hey, I just saw there's a meeting here. We need to do it." So it was quite a few years ago, and probably 5 or 6 years ago now. So the stats are probably a little different, but you know what? The message is still the same. So allow me to show that to you, and then I'll come right back. I'm going to leave you with one last thing, and I'm in a post-secondary institution, I can't leave an education without talking about that. Don't sugarcoat the stats. We have a significant issue, as you can see in the video, and it hasn't changed that much. Aboriginal kids, 1 in 2 chance of graduating and attending. For on-reserve kids, it's even worse. And we were talking about it, Shane and John and I were talking about it, and our kids are skewing the data on that. When they say, and the school districts are famous for, our Aboriginal graduate success rates are increasing by this much. But yeah. But if you go to the on-reserve kids, no change. They're still dropping out at grade 8 and grade 9. Right? I heard a quote this morning from Kelly before he left. Often we measure those things that are not important, and the things that are important, we don't measure. It's a good quote. So I'll use that. CC stole my video. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time, and again, appreciate the invitation to speak. It was lots of fun.